Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Cooler Master Liquid ML240. Is it a deal, or is it not? Okay, on today's video we're going to be taking a look at this. This is the Cooler Master Liquid ML240 all-in-one radiator system for PC cooling. Now the reason this video actually exists is primarily because I got a really good deal on this. The deal I posted on our Discord forum, which I'll put links to in the description below. But this was on Amazon at a ridiculous price of about £22.50, which for most people would be an absolute no-brainer, and obviously it was, so I bought a few of these to test out and to use. Now, recently, of current years, I've kind of fallen out of love with Cooler Master and some of their products, notably the Masterbox Lite 5 case, the 3.1, due to their choked off nature and lack of cooling ability. So when this came up, I was slightly hesitant. Do I want to go down the road of more Cooler Master stuff? But at the price, I couldn't turn it down. So these normally retail in the UK for in a region of around about £40, so £39.99, £45, that kind of price, which actually for a 240mm all-in-one radiator system is actually still a very good price. They do actually do a RGB version of this as well, which is a little bit dearer, around about the £55 to £60 mark. So if you don't necessarily need RGB bling, but you still want to cool down your CPU, then this is actually still a really good option. And because of the 240mm fans, or two 120mm fans put together, you still get a lot of cooling performance out of this for what is a relatively low price. Now in this video, my reference points are going to be basically focused against the stock cooler for the Ryzen 5, Ryzen 7, the Spire coolers, the Wraith coolers, and also the Arctic Cooling Freezer 33 and 34 models, which I generally tend to use in most of my builds. Now they are fantastic coolers. Again, fan-wise, you're looking at roughly the same because they've got two 120mm fans, you've got a massive heat sink. Obviously, this is a radiator, you've also got fluid as well to take up some of that thermal mass. So let's go through first of all, I'm going to take this out of the box and show you what you get for those of you that may be interested in this. And then we're going to discuss the pros and cons of this, and also whether or not I think this is actually good value for money at its normal retail price. So first of all, as you can see, the packaging is actually pretty spectacular. Cooler Master, marketing wise, they do a really good job. This looks the deal. They haven't gone overboard on it. It looks like a great product. The packaged very well. The packaging is very good. You've got all the details on there. And if you're receiving this as a gift, I think you'd be pretty happy with it. It looks the real deal. Inside the box, things don't really change a great deal. You've got a very good setup, a very good layout. It's all packaged extremely well. Got some foam padding on the top. So let's go through some of the accessories. So this is the first of the accessories bags. Now this is your CPU cooler mounts. Now in here you've got options for pretty much every cooler there is apart from Threadripper. So this is going to fit most builds, and again, if you're looking for doing an upgrade from your stock cooler, this is a really good idea. One thing I did notice straight away in here, which I'm not overly keen on, but isn't a deal breaker in any way, shape or form. Now this is the CPU fan splitter. Obviously because you've got two fans on there, depending on how you wire this up and how you use it, this is a splitter so you can connect additional fans. Or if you've maybe got a system with only one header and you want to connect everything into one, then you can use this. But in my mind, the kind of ketchupy and mustard fan connectors on there, they've used a tiny little bit of braiding there, some heat shrink. Surely they could have done it towards the end of the cable. It wouldn't have been a massive expense for them, in my opinion. So in my particular build, which is actually behind me in the system, I've already built in one of these, so this is why I'm going to do a review on it. I've actually swapped this out for a aftermarket part, which I picked up on Amazon, which again, these PWM splitters are really easy to get hold of and very cheap. So I've omitted this from my particular build, just thought I'd let you know. So also in here, obviously you get your Intel backplate, you get your mounting clips for AMD, you get your mounting clips for the Intel LGA 2011, and also in here you get a stack of other clips, screws, all that kind of stuff. Basically all the mounting hardware that you'll need. Also, which is quite nice to see, which I guess is pretty common these days, you also get a Cooler Master heat paste little syringe in there, so if you're maybe doing this, you haven't got previous kind of bottles of Arctic MX4 whatever, then it's quite nice to have that in the box straight away. Although in some respects I would have preferred to have seen it pre-applied to the actual base of the cooler, but again, some people may choose to do this differently. I guess they're giving you the options there. So again, lots and lots of mounting hardware, and hopefully there's a decent manual to tell you how to use all of this stuff. So speaking of manuals, we do actually get warranty information guide, and also get your instruction leaflet with all the installation process for the various types of CPU setups, all that kind of stuff. So looks like everything is going to be pretty easy, and it's your usual kind of IKEA style instructions. So it's graphical, it shows you where things go, and it looks to be very simple. In fact, when I came to install it, it was a very, very easy thing to do. Although I do have some experience, so maybe take that with a pinch of salt. So moving back to the unboxing, we get two Cooler Master fans. Now these are, I'll actually tell you the fan type, just for those of you that may be interested. So this is the Master Fan 120 AB, 640 to 2000 RPM, 12 volt fan. It's got a 4-pin PWM header, as you'd expect, and the blades are of a sort of semi-translucent design, although again, because it's going to be mounted to a radiator, I suppose that doesn't really make a great deal of difference. They could be solid plastic, it wouldn't make any difference at all. One thing I did notice straight away though is the actual rubber mountings on both sides of the fan. They seem to be very well made and very well secured. You do get some of these fans which aren't particularly great, so that was actually a plus point for me. Obviously you get two of those because this is a 240. Moving on to the radiator itself and the pump assembly. So this obviously is an all-in-one, so it's all completely connected straight out of the box. You've got a slimline aluminium radiator, which even out of the factory has got a few little dings in it, and the actual spray paint that they've put over the top of it doesn't entirely cover all of it. I can see there's a few bits of shiny metal sticking through, so quality control wise, possibly not great, but again, are you going to be able to see that once it's installed? No is the answer. So Cooler Master logo on both sides, so depending on which orientation you mount it, you're going to have that logo, which you may or may not wish to have. I'll just see if it is actually embedded or whether it's a sticker. Now that is on there pretty firmly, so if you wanted to hide that, you could always spray paint over it or put some tape over it, something like that. Moving down to the actual tubing. Now the tubing itself on this is kind of meh. I'm not overly keen on it. It's certainly flexible enough, and with its ridged design, it will flex quite nicely. It's not overly stiff, so if you've got a particular bend, then it should go quite nicely with that. Although it is semi-rigid, so it doesn't flex around a great deal. So if you do need to do something specific to your pipework, or you want to keep it neat, you may actually struggle with these. Although it is quite narrow because you haven't got braiding or any sheathing over it, so it is quite narrow, so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. But again, this kind of plastic tubing, not everyone's cup of tea, and over time, obviously, because of the heat cycles inside the PC, this will become brittle. Now moving to the actual pump assembly, this is pretty much a standard deal. So you've got your Cooler Master logo, which is actually illuminated, so there is a white LED on there, no RGB. Again, for some people, this may destroy their entire kind of build setup color-wise, having the white illumination on there. In most cases, white is going to fit in with most builds, so if you're going black and white, or you've got some other accent colors, it's not the worst thing. It is actually quite bright, which possibly you can see from the machine behind me. You can see it illuminated in the middle there, and the pump itself is actually quite large. Not as large as some of the deep cool ones with their additional RGB lighting and all that kind of stuff, like the Castle ones, but again, quite sizable, but not big enough to get in the way when you're actually installing it, which is actually quite a good thing. Now the actual connections on the top are relatively stiff but can be moved, so if you do want to move these out of the way, say they're interfering with maybe RAM modules or something like that, or you just want to route your wiring or your cabling away, then you can do that. The actual connection for the pump itself is a 3-pin connection, not a PWM, so ideally you want to take that to a fan header and set that to probably about 80% or maybe even 100%. For me personally, I generally would like to keep these pumps running at 100% all the time to keep the water circulating at a constant rate. But I did find actually this pump itself, whether it's this version, I've got a couple over to test so I can find out, but initially I did find that one at 100%, there was some resonance going through the rest of the chassis, and it was slightly noisy. So I've reduced it down to 80%, and then with a fan curve, so as the CPU gets hotter, then this will ramp up to its 100% if it really needs to. But essentially, ideally, you want to keep this between kind of 80% to keep the noise down, in my opinion. And actually, speaking of fan noise and noise in general, I did find that these fans actually at full blast at 100% in the chassis are pretty noisy and do make a loud noise. They're not silent by any means. Again, I've set these at the moment in the system to be around about 30 to 40% at kind of normal idle temperatures, and with quite a sharp curve up to about 80% fan at 50 degrees, and then from 50 degrees up to 70 degrees, then going up to 100%. So it does ramp up towards the higher end. At the lower end, actually pretty silent, and you can probably tell because it's running in the background. There's very little noise coming from it. I've got 8 or 9 fans in there as well, so it kind of all beds in quite nicely, and it isn't distracting. And I wouldn't say it was any noisier or any louder than my previous setup using the Freezer 33 or Freezer 34 for that matter. Now, talking of the mountings actually now, I'll go back to that. We've pretty much covered all the basics here. The fan mountings, or actually the cooler mounting, or pump mounting even, for AM4 actually I find to be a breath of fresh air. So if you're a relative newcomer to this, you'll find this very easy to do. Now, the AM4 clips themselves are actually very similar to the old school AM3 clips, where it's just a single loop over, so you've got the plastic retention lugs on the motherboard, so you don't actually have to take those off. So if you're a little bit kind of squeamish and you don't want to take the clamps off your motherboard like most people do generally straight away, and even for the stock AM4 coolers that come, the Wraith Spires and all that kind of thing, they actually require you to remove the plastic lugs so you can screw into them, whereas with these, pretty much most motherboards you can just go straight ahead and use the plastic lugs that are in there, which actually I found quite a nice thing to do and find the installation process very, very straightforward. So that pretty much goes through the unboxing and showing you what you actually get in the box. Probably a good idea now to talk about my opinion. So in my testing, which I've done, I've found there to be very, very little difference between using a good 120mm tower cooler against this all-in-one. I suppose essentially it's going to come down to the aesthetics of your build. If you like to see a water cooler and a radiator, or if your case has actually got the options to do that, some cases, such as like the older NZXT S340, there's limited places where you can actually put a radiator. You certainly can't in the back or the top because you've only got 120mm, so the only place you could put it is in the front. So maybe not the greatest idea in cases like that, but in more modern cases where you've got 240 or maybe even 360mm radiator slots at the top of your chassis, this is going to be ideal for you. Lots of fresh air coming in the front of your case and then taking the hot CPU air straight out the top of the case. Obviously, this will increase your CPU temperature slightly from the ambient temperature inside your case going into the radiator. And again, there's so many should I or shouldn't I options with water cooling and fan placement. Essentially, it's down to your individual systems, the airflow of your system, and your configuration to work out which is going to be best for you. Do you put a higher emphasis on cooler CPU or more so on a cooler GPU? Again, those are decisions that you can make for yourself. But all in all, I found this to be, for £40, if you're buying it brand new, I would say it's a very good option against things, again, like the Freezer 34 or the Freezer 33 series, or even the Evo type coolers from Cooler Master. This is definitely going to be a slight step up. Your ambient temperatures will be slightly lower, obviously due to the thermal mass of water and the radiator and all that kind of stuff. Essentially, under load, there's not a massive difference. You're looking probably between 5 to 10 degrees difference in cooling performance between the two options. But again, you've got approximately a 10% increase in price, I would say, if not slightly more. So essentially, if you're doing it on a price per cooling efficiency rating, then essentially they're very, very similar. So for me, it's going to come down to aesthetics and also what options you've got actually inside your case. If you've got a smaller case, then chances are you're going to have to stick with your tower cooler and be done with it. But if you've got a larger case and you want to experiment, then this is actually not a bad idea. So if you want to see how the build of this goes, I'll be doing the build of this in my new upcoming Micro ATX system, which should be very nice. So if you want to see that, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and the chime icon so you'll be notified of the future video releases. But for now, this has been the Cooler Master Master Liquid Light 240. Let me know in the comments what you think of it, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.